What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Hopefully everyone's having a good day. We're here to talk a little football. But before we do, the shooting, the tragedy, and just the type incident that makes your heart hurt, you feel sick to your stomach. 4 people died, including a police officer who had little children at home. We work with Folds of Honor, which is a charity that I'm personally involved with in terms of donating to, that helps first responders and veterans who lose their life to help their family and their children attempt to work through life that there's obviously no replacing when that happens. And obviously there were other people that lost their life in this incident. Saw a lady that worked in a finance company in the building where the league office was. This guy had targeted the league office. If you haven't seen the story, I'm sure most of you had. And, went to the wrong floor and killed himself. But just sick. Makes you sick to your stomach, and really feel for all these people's family members. And yeah, thank God it wasn't. I mean, it was awful what happened, and clearly this guy had imagined things way worse. But yeah, I mean, we'll try to talk about football today because that's what we do here. So we'll talk about Jimmy Haslam, who spoke today at the Browns training camp. Deebo had a comment today that I thought was kind of reflective of what's going on with the Terry McLaurin situation. I haven't talked yet about Deion, who looks like defeated bladder cancer, and kind of hit me when I was thinking about watching him talk yesterday. I would say, I don't want to say prove me wrong, but like he's clearly in it. Like this guy's here to coach. I mean, it wasn't just coaching his kids till the end. I mean, we'll discuss Deion, and then something I saw today on TV that I wanted to talk about in terms of the business around training camps for the front offices. But before we dive in any football, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, Gametime. Best ticketing app in the business. Been using for a long, long time. If you want to go to an event, any event, do you want to go to a concert? Do you want to go to a comedy show? Do you want to go to a game? You know what's right around the corner? Football. College football is in about a month. NFL football is about a month and a week. Now, I know we got preseason games. I think we got a game here in a couple nights. Trey Lance is going to play, but don't recommend going to a preseason game. But if you want to go to any regular season games, any college games, any concerts, we got you covered. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll start with Jimmy Haslam, who randomly on my YouTube feed, on my home feed, his press conference just popped up like an hour after the fact. So I just watched it. And I got to say, he's pretty convincing. Like, you watch him, even though I believe some of the things he said aren't necessarily true, he's pretty smooth in front of the mic. He's a smooth operator. Got a little politician to him because he mentioned something that I thought, I just don't believe. And it gets back to what we had talked about during the draft when it came to Shedeur Sanders. And he claimed that he had nothing to do with it, that it was his GM and head coach, but specifically his GM, who is in charge of running the draft. Jimmy Haslam said he was driving home on Friday night, never crossed his mind, that's after the third round, that they were going to draft Shedeur Sanders the next day. Even when he showed up and they met before the draft started. Didn't think it was going to happen. And then a couple rounds later, Shedeur Sanders is on their team. Here's why I have a hard time believing this. Because let's just put the Browns' moves in sequence, right? Obviously, they signed Flacco in the offseason when they know that Deshaun Watson is gone and his career's over, and Jimmy Haslam calls Deshaun Watson a swing and a miss. The one thing I appreciate about any human being, and I don't know any who have ever been given a $230 million contract, every penny guaranteed, good or bad, which Deshaun got. Even once your owner says that you were a swing and miss, you get married after that comment, you invite that guy that gave you $230 million to your wedding. There was a picture of Jimmy Haslam at the wedding. So listen, I commend Deshaun for that because that's what any normal human would do. You could say whatever you want about me. If you gave me $230 million, you will be at my wedding. Shit, you might be front and center. I might make you my best man. But here's what doesn't make any sense. They sign Joe Flacco. They trade for Kenny Pickett. Then in the first round, they make a trade which gives them an extra first round pick the following year for a team that I'm sure their GM, Ivy League guy, runs some models, has the Jags probably missing the playoffs and has the Jags potentially giving them a pick that's pretty valuable. I would also guess if they ran their own models on their own team, not going to go well either, and probably a top 10 pick. So they're going to have two really good picks in what looks like to be a good quarterback draft, which most good front offices have somewhat of a feel for the strengths and weaknesses of the following year's draft before that draft starts. Because part of being a GM, unlike a coach, you don't live week to week. You live year to year. And a good one views it through like a 3, 4, 5-year lens. So when you draft a quarterback in the third round, when you already have Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett on the roster, it makes absolutely no sense to draft another quarterback in that second or third day. Not just because of the logistics of getting guys on the field. This is not defensive line or wide receiver or linebacker where you can have multiple guys and rotate during the same plays. Only one quarterback can play. But clearly, based on their board, they had Dillon Gabriel above Shedeur Sanders. They like Dillon because they had the opportunity to draft either one of them in the third round. They chose Dillon Gabriel. So if you pick the one that you liked more, which, listen, this is a subjective profession. I'm not saying they're right or wrong with that. I viewed Shedeur Sanders as a better NFL prospect than Dillon Gabriel. They did not. And I bet if you went around the league, people would be all over the map. But that doesn't matter. They showed us who they liked more. They literally drafted the guy. So now you have a 40-year-old Flacco who doesn't need practice or reps, but you know can start games for you. You have Kenny Pickett, who I'm sure Kevin Stefanski liked coming out of the draft. They got for nothing, and they go, listen, we actually think this guy has some characteristics in our offense, especially if we're a decent running team. There might be something there. And then Dillon Gabriel, a guy we liked in the draft that if you take a guy in the third round, you probably think, hey, ideally back up, but who knows? Maybe he's got some upside to be a starter. You wouldn't take another guy in the fifth round. This isn't linebacker. This isn't safety. This isn't offense. You don't do that. So it makes no sense from a roster building standpoint. And while I do believe that the Browns get away with doing some like low character stuff more than other teams, because like, oh, two Ivy League guys, two guys, Ivy Leaguers, high level guys. And listen, I think they're smart guys. But they pick players sometimes. It's not that much different like Al Davis in the 80s. But we don't really Jimmy Haslam gets all the blame, not the GM. I was talking to a buddy of mine for another team that like we got a front office group chat, and we're always saying like these guys take no criticism for taking major character risks. I did see TMZ tweet out her phone call for Junkins. Listen, I'm not one to point fingers. Who knows? Only those two know. But last year they took Hall, the defensive lineman, who didn't even make it through training camp without an issue with a gun pointed at his fiance, which again that happened because he pled like he went on probation, like he got in trouble for it. They suspended him for it. This one, we'll see how this situation plays out. And again, Junkins was not a character risk when you ask people around the league, but regardless, like they have issues that it feels like other teams simply don't. And the owner takes a lot of shit. And it felt like today, like, guys, I have nothing to do with this. They pick the players. I don't tell them to pick the players. This quarterback one, I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. He can say whatever he wants. And listen, you watch him talk, he's smooth at saying it. I just don't believe him. Because I can't imagine a GM, given their situation, given even from a money ball standpoint, it doesn't work like that at quarterback. The one time we've seen it, I remember how big of a deal it was when they took RG3 second and they took Cousins in the fourth round. And as information came out, why did that happen? Because the Shanahan family did not want RG3. They wanted to take Kirk Cousins. I think Kyle would have taken him at 10. Remember, they traded up to 2, but he wanted to take him in the second round. He said, let's take another player and take this guy in the second round. The owner wouldn't let him. This owner is proven to get involved. He got involved with Deshaun Watson, and I think it's pretty clear that he got involved here. Now, the one thing he said, which I don't blame him for getting involved, if that's the case with this one, coaches will live week to week. They will try to win every single game. Nothing is more famous than the Flores Stephen Ross situation. He's like, Brian, we're trying to get Joe Burrow, the guy that will change our franchise. We already suck. I will pay you $100,000 a loss. Let's keep losing games. And what did Brian Flores do? Won a game against Cincinnati Bengals in overtime. Won 3 of his last 5 games. They ended up with Tua. The Bengals ended up with Joe Burrow. Hell, they could have taken Herbert. They didn't even draft the right guy. But it simply was not the right move. The Browns are going to suck. They're not going to be any good. We all understand that. Now, are they going to be like a one-win team? Obviously, they got good players on their team. They got some young, talented players on their team. But their quarterback situation is a disaster. And Jimmy Haslam was asked about, does Kevin understand that, we got to see the young guys play before we have to make a decision next year? He said, yeah, Kevin understands that. So, which he should. No one wants to see Joe Flacco on a 3-7 team, right? Play Dylan Gabriel, play Shedeur Sanders. Here's what's pretty clear. And Kenny Pickett pulled his hamstring, which not an ideal injury for a quarterback, right? If you pull your hamstring, that means you're running around. It's like, Kenny, you're not Lamar Jackson. So it's that's an injury that I got red flagged a little bit, But at the end of the day, Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco better really enjoy the game reps they get in September. Because I would say starting early October, when it's pretty clear this team probably does not have high hopes, especially when you factor in the division they play in, I would start rotating these guys. I'd say Gabriel gets a game, and if you do well, you keep playing. If you don't, Shedeur comes in. He gets a game. If he keeps playing, he'll play the next game. If he doesn't, we'll just go back and forth. Almost treat them like starting pitchers. But I would say everything is on the table with these two players, and I think having those 2 first-round picks, especially if Jacksonville underachieves this year, as historically they typically do, I would expect the Browns to take a quarterback really high in 2026. Pro golfers drive for show and putt for some dough. And the easiest way to make you some dough, betting on this week's tournament at DraftKings Sportsbook. From the opening round, Championship Sunday, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with live betting, player props, and so much more. If you've never bet on golfers before, it's easy. You can take them to win. You can take them to top 10. You can take them to top 20. Some guys this week I like. We're making the push toward the FedEx playoffs. Ricky Fowler has been playing good golf. Hammer him to top 20. Max Homa, another guy who is trending, top 20. Matt Fitzpatrick, also playing really well. If you want to get a little more aggressive, top 10. Jake Knapp as well. Just had a good week at the 3M. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Deebo Samuel had a comment today, which I thought was pretty interesting, and I don't even necessarily disagree. He said, I still have something left in the tank, which is crazy. He's not 38 years old. I think he's 27, 28. He's not as old as, maybe he's 29 because he was a senior coming out of college. But this isn't like Larry Fitzgerald here. This is a guy who, I hope he still has something in the tank. But I started thinking, Adam Peters' approach this offseason, which I commend him for taking this approach. I'm not going to pay Christian Wilkins type guys 130 cents on the dollar and regret these contracts in a couple years just because I got Jaden Daniels' contract and I got room to deal with. I'm going to use some draft capital for guys that I actually think I can get that make a lot of money that we can fit inside our cap, but get for 4th-round picks, get for a 5th-round pick, get for a 3rd-round pick. My starting left tackle, my starting wide receiver. I'm like, okay, I like what you're doing there. Laramie Tunsil deal. I would make that move 100 times out of 100 if I'm Adam Peters. The Deebo thing, which I get, he was around some of Deebo's best moments. I'm sure he was a huge part of scouting him coming out of college and knows him really well. I'm pro Deebo Samuel. I even understand the move. Here's the problem. When you make a move like that, it sent out a signal to your star wide receiver. One, it's like, am I even your guy? Right? Because you're not paying me. And in a weird way, it's not Deebo's fault, but Deebo's also in a contract year. So Deebo's coming in there, knows that the GM, he's one of the GM's guys. And if you're Terry McLaurin, you start thinking, am I not one of their guys? They don't want to pay me. Now, obviously, the money, I'm not going to pay you $40 million a year. But I do have to wonder if looking back, at the Deebo Samuel trade if that sparks some, I don't even want to say animosity, but McLaurin's brain to go. And then obviously the contracts get weird with DK Metcalf, and he starts thinking, like, I need way more money. And now they're in a situation where, listen, I do think Deebo, if I was a betting man, I think he's going to have some moments this year. But this Deebo thing, if he doesn't have moments and it's created this weird spot for Terry, even he'll eventually play because he's not going to give up, whatever his salary is this year, like 16 million cash. What if you don't get the carry that gave you 13 touchdowns? And the guy who was all in, team captain, you get a guy, because we're all human beings, who has resentment, who's mad at the situation, who thinks he's getting screwed. Even sometimes when you're not getting screwed, when you're in your own head, and I can only imagine in an athletic situation, in music, you get some of these managers and everyone that has their hand in your cookie jar starts feeding into that, right? Feeding it. Most of us, like, especially when you're younger, our parents are the opposite. It's like, pull your head out of your ass, right? This is not a way to operate. Where I think sometimes these guys get in situations where their boy, their agent, their manager is like, fuck these guys. We'll show them. It's like, no, let's show everybody in the league so we can get you an ungodly amount of money at the end of the season if this team is unwilling to pay you. But sometimes that's not how it works. Uh, Deion, who gave the press conference yesterday, and I think a lot of us, and maybe I just kind of believed like some social media headlines, but it's not. I would say it's a little abnormal to have a press conference with your medical team. He'd already been kind of an undisclosed sickness. I kind of thought there was like above a 50% chance he was going to retire or just quit and just say he was sick. He couldn't do it. If anything, he did the opposite. He said he got bladder cancer. He removed the bladder. He defeated the cancer, and he's back and he's coaching. And I've often thought, one, I can't even imagine as someone whose dad has been dead for a while now. The one thing, whether you agreed or disagreed or thought the hype or whatever, like I have a soft spot for just a dad coaching his son. And I can't even imagine in Division I football, if you're Deion Sanders, one of the most famous, best football players of all time, you get to coach both your sons, right? Who, Shedeur drafted, and obviously Shiloh's at an NFL camp right now. It had to be some of the coolest weeks, days, years of his life. Coaching his two kids for 2 years at Colorado, playing on ESPN in front of 5, 8. I mean, they were doing huge television ratings. It was awesome from just a human aspect of being able to coach your children. But I also wondered, like, once his kids leave, especially his Shedeur, who's his quarterback, was he doing this because he's a football guy, he loves football, but he also gets to be around his kids? If you follow them on social media, and Travis was essentially like his kid too, they were always in his office, they were always hanging out. Well, then all those guys are gone now, right? Travis, Shedeur, Shiloh, all gone. Now he's coaching your kids, my kids, not my kids, because my kid won't be Division I athlete. More than likely, who knows? Don't underestimate him. Maybe he's tough. Maybe he's got a little Rudy in him. But just he's coaching other people's kids that he didn't just grow up around. These aren't like his people he'd known for a long, long time. Would the fire still be there? Does he still want to coach? If you get cancer and you have that cancer removed and your children are gone in the NFL, and not only do you want to keep coaching, like you're driven to get healthy, to coach this upcoming season, I mean, Deion's in it to win it. I mean, if there was ever a question like, does he really want to do this? Do you really think he's driven to like get to an SEC school or an ACC school or whatever? Like, yeah, I think he is 100% not going away. And I also wonder if last year he added Warren Sapp to his D-line coach. This year, Marshall Faulks, his running back coach. Now some of his boys are on the staff. Maybe those guys in a different way kind of fill the void of like his second family type. But I'm happy Deion, we need characters. And that's what football has. Obviously, the players in all these sports are the stars. But football, more than any of these other sports, their coaches, college and pros, are as big of television characters in this reality show that is the world of pro and college football, as important as basically any player beside a couple quarterbacks. And Deion is very, very valuable to college football. So I'm glad he's okay. As someone who's lost many of family members to different types of cancer, I can't imagine it was extremely scary. He's had the foot issue with the turf toe dating back to college or the pros, where he had to get toes chopped off. I think multiple toes. Now he had this cancer. Say this for Deion might not have liked to tackle, but he's a tough sob. So um, I'm happy that Deion's doing okay. Can I tell you about my friends at Mando? Here's the thing: summer is upon us. Where I live, I think it's 110 degrees today, and I'm a sweater, and I don't like smelling. So the key with Mando and their deodorant, it has sweat control. So not only does it block the odor all day, but it controls my sweat. I don't like to just be soaked if I'm just walking outside to grab something out of my car. And here's the thing: it was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. So all the products, they're baking soda free, and you can choose from a variety of fresh scents like bourbon leather, clover woods, Mount Fuji is the one I use, or just the go-to pro sport. Want to try America's #1 whole body deodorant formula right now? You can find them in Walmart, Target, and other retailers around the country. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid starter deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like Mini Mando body wash or deodorant wipes, love those, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use the code JOHN, that's JOHN, at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. shopmando.com. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. Mando's got you covered. Protect your pits, baby. Smell great doing it. And last but not least, I was at my desk earlier today, and I saw that Pat McAfee had on Nick Caserio, the general manager of the Houston Texans. And he was messing with him a little bit, saying, like, have you seen these clips of Anthony Richardson? He's trying to, Pat's a Colts guy. And I guess Anthony Richardson had some highlight passes in training camp. Like, that's kind of the defining attribute of his career, like a highlight pass. Like, are you a good player? But his point was, like, are you keeping track of everything that's not only going on in your division, but around the NFL? And it was just a real question to Caserio. Like, are you watching all this stuff? And Caserio essentially said, yeah. And I think what people don't understand is one of the big jobs of the front office, starting with the GM, with your pro director or your director of player personnel, and then your in-house scouts. You divvy up the NFL. So if I'm the Houston Texans, obviously your opponents, you have a pro scout that usually advances your opponent. So if I'm going to use the Niners for an example, because it's easy for me. I follow them the closest. If I'm John Schneider in the Seattle Seahawks, and we play the 49ers week 1, the guy that is going to do the advance report for my coaching staff on the 49ers, one of his teams, let's say he has 8 teams during training camp. We've split up the teams throughout the league, 3 or 4 scouts, 8 to 10 teams per scout, maybe less, 6, 7, 6. They follow the team. The way I would approach it in 2025, I would make a Twitter account just for work, and I would follow all the beat writers of all my teams, because I think that's probably the modern day newspaper. And I would also follow on YouTube and on Instagram all the teams. So anytime they had interviews, all the press conferences, and you basically just consume all this stuff before the preseason game starts to keep notes on everything that's going on at camp. For the Niners, for example, the veteran guys that you know are going to make the team, you're just keeping tabs. Juwan Jennings pulled his calf. Boom. We're monitoring his situation, how long he misses. Today, Ricky Pearsall misses practice. Boom. Mykel Williams, the 11th overall pick, missed practice today, ankle, taking notes. You know all those guys are going to make the team, right? And most players, maybe some rookies, but veteran guys don't play as much in the preseason. What you're really monitoring is from basically the 4th round through undrafted free agents, you are keeping tabs before the games start of what people are saying about them, what the coaching staff, the head coach, and the coordinators, the way they talk about them in press conferences. Listen, you got to take it for what it is, but the beat writers that are at practice, either posting videos or tweeting about this guy looks really good, this guy looks really bad, and just taking notes on, hey, this guy's been making some plays at practice. We got to keep tabs on this guy. And then when the preseason games start, You spend all your time evaluating their entire draft beside the first couple rounds because those guys aren't going to potentially get cut. And then the practice squad guys from the previous year. Because all these guys, right, you have a 90-man roster, well, only 53 can make the team. And like I said, you already have a ton of veteran guys on the team that are basically locks. So there are, I'm just going to pick a number, 20 guys for 11 spots. You know, eight are going to be available. And what if some of those eight are guys that actually have some talent? Maybe you like coming out in the draft that made some plays during preseason. They were just hoping to put on the practice squad at a position that maybe your team needs. You're like, hey, this guy could be our fifth wide receiver. So basically, every team in the league as of late July is really monitoring. I would say it used to be when I was in the league, like the newspapers, we would have these things called clips, and they would just cut for every team, the Redskins, the Eagles, the Cowboys, all the articles every single day on a clip. So it could be multiple pages. And then you would just look through it. You use Pro Football Talk, you use Roto World, and you just accumulate all this information. It's kind of like a running diary on each team leading up to the preseason games. Then you evaluate the players, and now it's way easier. You just like watch 87, watch 22, and you can just watch all their cut ups. And then when a guy gets cut, you have grades on him. And after a couple preseason games, you start funneling that information to your GM. So your GM has a list of maybe the top 50 guys. Your scouting department goes, hey, this guy might get cut. I think he's pretty good. We should, here are 27 plays he's had in the preseason. You should watch him. And then if it's pretty interesting, you have your coaching staff watch him. So you know, like, hey, should we cut our last offensive lineman to claim this guy who can play guard and center? And you could play that game at any position. Quarterback's a little different, but definitely O line, D line. I mean, let's face it, not a lot of good O line and D linemen are getting cut. But if you see a guy with physical traits that you think your offensive line coach can work with, maybe your offensive line coach liked that guy in the draft, and he was a fifth round pick, and you guys would have taken him in the sixth round, and then he gets cut in training camp. Maybe you think about claiming him, and even if you don't claim him, maybe you try to bring him on your practice squad because once a guy is practice squad, like clears waivers, any practice squad can take him. So this is a time right now of just research and information accumulation. So that is all these front offices are doing. Most college scouts within the next week will be kind of sent out to to their kind of their areas, and we'll start going to training camps for Texas and USC and Oregon and Alabama, and kind of focus on that. But your in-house crew, three or four guys with your GM, really focus on the league, and then you really kind of cut down that information with individual players, maybe your coordinators and your head coach. But your coaching staff is not even, they don't mess with that really at all. Maybe a head coach does. A head, like especially a veteran head coach, like an Andy Reid when Belichick was in the league, a Pete Carroll, like they're juggling it all. But like the younger coordinators like Kevin O'Connell and Kyle Shanahan, they are much more focused on the team, the scheme, and obviously they talk to their GM of like giving him, hey, I don't like our running back depth. We got to really, and then that information gets kind of given back out. Hey, we got to really focus on running back and corners. But you really utilize, the beat reporters that are at these practices. And there are, some consistent guys that have been beat reporters and covered teams for decades that you just feel pretty good about, like getting information, especially sometimes it's like, hey, they're kind of down on so and so. And it might be like a fifth year veteran guard. You're like, hey, I actually think that guy, I know they got some younger guys on their team, but he might start for our team. So you kind of have to have a feel like the way Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger and those guys look at the stock market is the way GMs and front offices look at rosters. It's all about who's trending up, who's trending down, financially, who's overpaid, which might cause him to get cut. Who is a guy that's so cheap, even if he's trending down, they're going to keep on the roster because economically it makes sense. With this guy, maybe they're over this veteran player. Like with the Dolphins, obviously they're star level names. Like the Dolphins might trade Tyreek Hill. I'm not saying they would, but I'm just saying they might. But guys like that, which my mom probably knows about, they're a lot more under the radar type, like hey, this guy was a fifth rounder 2 years ago. He's been on the practice squad. We really liked him. He's not going to make our team. Listen, I know you guys like him. Would you trade a seventh round pick for him? Or hell, would you trade? I see you got five running backs that you think all could make the team. We need a running back. We don't need this linebacker who you like. Could we flop the two guys? You trade me the running back for the linebacker. Like that starts happening, especially, probably a week into the preseason. Because once these pads come on, it starts separating. It's like, God, I thought we were a little better at D line. I don't love our group, right? I thought our corners were a little bit better. We got a couple injuries. We suck. We need to add somebody. So your mind really starts working like that as over the next week in pads, and then especially as you get into a joint practice into a preseason game, that really starts to, I would say, crystallize a roster slash depth chart, which the coach is just so enamored with the GM, but the GM is also trying to balance like the rest of the league to like keep tabs on everything. So there's just a lot of moving parts. It's why it's so impossible that we'll never see any more of the GM head coach. Like those days, it's not even possible. There's not enough time in the day, especially with expanded rosters, 90 man. There's so many people out there. Just a lot going on. It's just a really really busy time. But right, those first couple weeks before the preseason games start are like you can just it's pretty easy to kind of keep track of everything. Once the preseason games start going on, you're trying to evaluate players, you're keeping information, you got injuries happening, you got your own team you're trying to help evaluate because typically, you kind of break up the evaluation of your roster from a front office standpoint. Scouts get different positions, maybe multiple positions. You meet with the coaches and you're kind of a part of those personnel meetings in the long uh, the long kind of table, the meeting tables that most NFL teams have kind of those big corporate rooms where you could fit like 30 people in and have those meetings that we've seen on Hard Knocks forever, which we see less and less, but it's a great time of year. I mean, I can't even imagine looking back. It's impossible to keep up with the entire league at a high level, so it's why you have to break it down in smaller either quadrants or five, six, seven teams per team, and the GM tries to get like a big macro version and then gets individual information kind of like shot up to him through his people. It's why we talk a lot about hiring the right people. It's no different, with the coaching staff. You got to depend on your coordinators, your position coaches. No different as a GM. You got to feel really good about your pro scouts, your college scouts, because they're feeding you all this information, and they get to kind of decipher what's important and what's not important, what we need, and also the way you think, the way we look at players, what we value in players on and off the field. I saw Sean Payton today talked about signing Sutton and to a big deal. And he said, "When did you know?" He said, "Early on when I first got the job." And the first things he said were not size or speed or high pointing ball. It was work ethic, leadership, things that these coaches value, given how much money's on the line right now, is the intangible stuff. It's why, trying to keep a tabs on, it's why your college scouts are so important because if this dude was drafted in the seventh round 2 years ago and you really liked him and he's going to be available, well, what was the character write up we had on this guy? Because, oh, I remember why he fell in the seventh round. Questionable character. Yeah, he can play, but do we want that guy in our locker room? Do we want him trying to make out with people's foreheads like in Vegas? No, we don't. So, uh, fun time of year for the NFL front offices.